to another episode of Bowery Trio Piano Tuesday video. Today we're going to talk about the New Jersey All State Audition requirement. Their etude this season is the Mozart Sonata K280 in F major first movement. My past two videos was about the Illinois All State Audition, so if you are preparing for that, make sure to check out the two etudes I've already posted on practicing tips. The links will be in the description below. And yeah, go check it out. Let's get started. It is hard to talk about the sonata without talking about the classical sonata form first. because the form in the sonatas is everything. Once we understand the form, we can section it off in a practical and effective way so we can practice it efficiently, and also while understanding how the movement is structured. In a classical sonata form, it consists of 3 big sections: the exposition, development, and then the recapitulation. In the exposition, there are thematic sections. We have first theme, then transition, then we go to the second theme, and then closing material at the end of that section. In the first theme, because this is in F major, first theme usually starts in F major for the key of the whole sonata. And then while the rest of the material to the transition, second theme to the closing, modulates usually to the dominant, which is the 5 in the key into C major. Then let's skip the development and talk about the recapitulation. The recap has the same thematic material as the exposition. The only difference is that instead of modulating to C major, we are all going to stay at home in F major for all the thematic materials in the recap. When we get to the development in the middle section, it is more unstable. The key relations are more exotic. The composer usually likes to explore different key areas that is a little bit further from the home key, the F major key. But eventually, it prepares itself to go back to the recap, which is back to F major. So here's the sectional breakdown. Here's the exposition with all its themes, then the development. As you can see, as it starts in C major, moves to D minor, which is the relative minor of F major, and then goes back to F major. And then as you can see, the recap is all in F major. All the themes transition into the closing. All stays at home in tonic F major. Think of it as a music theory and analytical way. It's a little bit confusing when we want to practice, but it does help with memory too, knowing which key we're in and what harmonies we're supposed to play. But when we want to structure it in a musical way, it makes more sense if you think of it as a storytelling experience. Really, you can use any fable, any children's story that you know, like Jack and the Beanstalk, the Little Red Riding Hood, any adventure story that you can make up to help you develop musical themes to be more imaginative. So you know what to do when the first theme comes back, but in a different key. What is the different emotion or expression that you want to express? So let's think of it in a more storytelling, imaginative way. I'm gonna tell you the story that I make up, and let's see if you could agree. If you do leave a comment below. If you don't, give me another story that you might want to come up with. All right, here's my story. The exposition is the start of the adventure, the beginning of the story. I have my main character. Her name is Annie. She got a call from her Aunt Lily and that she is ill and sick, that needs someone to come and take care of her for a couple of weeks. Annie agrees. She hops on a bus and begins her journey from a little town in Iowa to the city of Chicago. Then, through her journey to a foreign city, she experiences and faces new obstacles that she has to overcome. Maybe she lost her phone at a rest stop, oh no. And then, on top of it all, she overslept and missed her stop. But eventually, and finally, she arrived at her aunt's, took great care of her Aunt Lily, and she returned to perfect health in no time. Annie did a great job taking care of her aunt. She learned a lot from this journey and returned back home with more courage and confidence in herself. So you see, my story has, starting from home, traveling to a foreign city, facing obstacles and different emotions that she needs to overcome, and at the end, she conquered it all and returned home safely and sound with more courage and confidence. Does that sound kind of like the sonata form structure? Going from home to a foreign key and go back to home again, safely, safe and sound? If you don't like my story, can you come up with a story of your own and leave it in the comment below? Be fun and imaginative that you think will fit the music. I look forward to reading all of your stories and that you guys come up with. All right, now we have a pretty good idea of how the whole movement is structured. Let's get into the technical difficulty of this piece. In the classical period and style, most have a strong sense of elegance, especially Mozart. All these fast, virtuosic 16 notes passages has to be light and elegant and musical. The fortes you see on the music shouldn't be forceful. The staccatos you see has to be bouncy and light rather than feel like you're choking it, not too short. All the trills you see has to start from the note above and then trill and fit into the duration of the rhythms. And so how do we do all that? How do we make it elegant and fits in the classical style? Well, first, let's talk about all these great composers. We know Mozart, Beethoven, Brahms, Haydn. They not only write piano music, even though we as pianists, they wrote a lot of piano music, but they also wrote awesome and great orchestral music. My teacher always asked me to reimagine the melodies and accompaniment that is in different registers in different sections with different instruments that might be in an orchestra. That way, we can really pinpoint the sound quality that we want, the texture, and mimic those instruments. Because the piano sound has less flexibility than those instruments. Let's just take the first theme, for example. If this is not a piano piece, I would imagine it to be a chamber string orchestra. The higher strings are the treble notes, and the lower strings are the bass notes in the cello and the bass of a string orchestra. They're playing the continuo in the left hand from measure 3 to 6. Boom, 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 boom. So imagine them like playing like this. It's not too short. A string sound, they have resonance to it for each of the notes. So it's not too short. Boom, 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 boom. And think of how the right hand melody is the treble violin sound. Think of how brilliant and soaring it'll be when the violin's playing the opening melody. Bum, 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 ba-da-da-da-da-dum, bum, dee-dum, bum. And then how brilliant those 16 notes virtuosic notes passages will be. From measure 13 to 26, think of a cello playing those triplets and think how sturdy and warm those triplets will be. The more precise you can think about these different sounds, the more difference you can make when playing these different sections and different themes. For these 16 notes virtuosic passages, having good fingering is key. I like most of the fingerings that I see in my music, in my audition, but if you don't like the fingerings in your audition, ask your teacher to rewrite it, to make it fit, make it comfortable for you, and then stick to it. Every time you practice, make sure you're using the same fingerings all the time when you're practicing those passages. Please, please, please be super conscious about fingerings in these sections at the beginning stages of practicing. I know I talked a lot about having good fingerings in all my past videos. That's because I have come to realize how important fingerings are in the later stages of my studies. I feel like if I had teachers who stressed the importance of fingerings and early on in my studies, I don't think I would have struggled with these difficult passages as much, these techno passages. Once you get a good fingering down, it is so much easier to build up the speed. All right, let's practice the right hand of the transition section of the exposition together. Because here I think is the hardest passage in terms of fingerings and finger turns, because it gets a little bit chromatic, where a lot of mixing with the black keys and the white keys. From measure 17 to 22, that's the passages where it gets chromatic. So let's play it slowly together. All right, when we're doing slow practice, the first thing is to make sure we're doing the correct fingerings consistently, all the time, the same ones. And once we get used to that, we also want to build in the slow practice, you doing the musical things and the phrasings that we want to do when we're up tempo. That way, when we're up to tempo, we don't even have to think about it. Your fingers, your mind just knows what to do with the phrasings, musical ideas, melodic materials, and then also fingerings, the most important thing. Okay? So let's try. from measure 23 to 26, if you group the triplets a little differently, then the phrasing in the fingers gets a little easier to understand, and it makes a lot more sense. Look at my music here, grouping it just a little different. Let's see if it works out. Let's play it together. If you play like how Mozart groups it with these triplets, it is harder to phrase and build because we kind of get stuck on the first note of each triplet, like this. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. If you play at a much faster at a tempo, it makes much more sense with the phrasings and the crescendo direction. Another technical difficulty that might not seem like such a big deal, but if you're aware of it and you get to practice this technique, it will make a huge stylistic difference, making it a little more elegant and fits more of the classical style. And that is the two-note slurs. It is everywhere in this piece, whether it is 2 8th note slurs or quarter note slurs in the left hand. We must take it as elegant as possible. The accent you see on the first note is not a true accent. It's more of a lean, an emphasis towards the first one, T, and then release. The second one is the light and closing of that little phrase, little gesture. Like you see in measure 5 and 6, in measure 18 to 22, measure 40 and 41, etc. It is everywhere. Let me show you how to make the two-note slur sound elegant. All right, now with the two-note slurs, we want to make a gesture, the down, up gesture for those two notes. We want emphasis on the first one, and then release on the second one. So it's like a natural decrescendo between those two notes. Down, up, up. And in measure 18 to 22, it's the same thing with your left hand. Down, up, with the octaves, down, down. So the second note is always less, to make sure we release roundedly to make the gesture complete. And techniques and phrasings become repetitive in the sonata form. Since the themes and materials are being recycled through the entire movement, once you really nail the exposition, the rest of the movement becomes easier to practice. The more classical sonata you play, the more you'll recognize the pattern and the sections and the gestures as well. All right, once we get the technique down, the gestures down, then we build up the tempo. Don't practice super fast right away, okay? It might seem easy, but to connect all the sections, all the themes together, it takes time to build up the tempo. So start slow and put the sections together little by little. Increase the clicks like 2 or 3 clicks at a time until we get to Allegro assai, which is around 130-ish, okay? It's not all about speed. And like I said before, classical means elegance, and all these different gestures and techniques are super important to really practice well. Then we bring in the tempo, and it'll sound like how you would imagine it. Like I said before, the materials are being recycled. Make sure you pay super close attention to all the dynamic contrast that you see between phrases, between sections, to really bring out the storytelling aspect that you want to bring out. Okay, really tell your story, the story that you want, that you made up. Thank you so much for watching today, and I hope you have more of an understanding of how to play Mozart and how to play a sonata and recognizing the sonata form. If you have any questions, please leave a comment below, or if there are any other piano music that you'd like me to give practicing tips on, do tell me that as well. Thanks again. I will see you guys soon. Bye.